Shadows of the past, the familiar ache in Olivia Morrow's chest intensified as she stared at the glossy advertisement. The Thorn Resorts and Hotels chain was expanding to her hometown of Cedar Falls, and they were hiring. The name Sebastian Thorn glared back at her from the page, awakening memories she'd tried to bury for 5 years. "You sure about this?" her roommate Jasmine asked, peering over her shoulder. "Working for the guy who put your family out of business seems like the perfect opportunity," Olivia finished, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper. "He won't recognize me. It's been years, and we never actually met." What Sebastian Thorn did know was profit margins and acquisitions. What he didn't know was how his company's aggressive expansion had decimated the heart of Cedar Falls' historic district, including Morrow's Table. Her family's restaurant that had served the community for 3 generations. Her father had died of a heart attack 6 months after they closed. Her mother had never recovered from the twin losses of her husband and their legacy. And Olivia? She'd carried the weight of both, along with a simmering anger directed at one man. The next morning, Olivia submitted her application online. Using her mother's maiden name, Olivia Bennett, her resume highlighted her event planning experience, but conveniently omitted her connection to Morrow's Table. 3 interviews later, she was hired as the new events coordinator for the Thorn Grand Hotel's opening season. "You have exactly the fresh perspective we need, Ms. Bennett," Sebastian's assistant had told her. "Mr. Thorn was particularly impressed with your local knowledge." Olivia's first day arrived with a crisp autumn chill. The converted textile mill that now housed the Thorn Grand Hotel stood as a gleaming monument to wealth. Its historic brick facade maintained while its interior had been gutted and transformed into luxury accommodations. Just 2 blocks away sat the empty shell of what had once been Morrow's Table. "Ms. Bennett," a deep voice called from behind her as she studied the lobby's detailed ceiling. "Welcome to the Thorn family." Sebastian Thorn was taller than his photographs suggested. His dark hair was lightly threaded with silver at the temples, and his tailored suit emphasized broad shoulders. But it was his eyes that caught her off guard, warm brown instead of the cold blue she'd imagined during countless nights plotting this moment. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Thorn," she replied, extending her hand and ignoring the unexpected flutter in her stomach. His handshake was firm, but not aggressive. "Please, it's Sebastian. I've reviewed your portfolio again. Your concept for our opening gala is exactly what we need, honoring local tradition while embracing new beginnings." Irony wasn't lost on Olivia. "I believe understanding history is essential when creating something new," she said, each word carefully chosen. Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. "Couldn't agree more. That's why I'm hoping you'll join me for dinner this evening. I'd like to hear more about your connection to Cedar Falls. There's something about this town that feels unfinished to me." Olivia's pulse quickened. This was happening faster than she'd anticipated. "I'd be honored," she replied, already calculating how to use this unexpected invitation to her advantage. As Sebastian walked away, Olivia touched the locket hidden beneath her blouse and sighed. A small photo of her parents standing proudly in front of Morrow's Table on its opening day. "I'm here, Dad," she whispered, "and he'll never know what hit him." Calculated moves. The private dining room at the Thorn Grand's rooftop restaurant offered a panoramic view of Cedar Falls that stole Olivia's breath despite herself. Twinkling lights spread across the valley like fallen stars, the river cutting through the landscape like a silver ribbon. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Sebastian gestured toward the window as he poured her a glass of wine. "I fell in love with this view the first time I saw it." Olivia took a measured sip. "Is that why you chose Cedar Falls? The view?" Her tone was casual, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Sebastian settled into his chair, his expression shifting to something more contemplative. "Partially, but honestly, it was the community's history. These mill towns have stories embedded in their foundations." He ran his finger along the rim of his glass. "My father built his empire by demolishing history. I wanted to preserve it." The statement caught her off guard. This wasn't the callous mogul she'd constructed in her mind. "Your father was Sebastian Thorn Sr., correct?" I read about his developments." Olivia kept her voice neutral, though mentioning the name sent a pulse of anger through her. Sebastian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, the great Sebastian Thorne, who never saw a historic building he didn't want to replace with glass and steel. He looked up, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features. I apologize. That's not appropriate conversation for a business dinner. No, Olivia said, leaning forward. I'd like to hear more. Family legacies are ... complicated. Over the next 3 hours, Olivia executed her plan with surgical precision, asking questions that revealed Sebastian's insecurities while sharing just enough fabricated personal details to seem transparent. But something unexpected happened. As plates were cleared and conversation deepened, Sebastian Thorne revealed himself to be disconcertingly human. The Cedar Falls acquisition was my first solo project after my father died, he confessed, staring into his glass. The board was watching me, waiting for me to fail. Delegated too much. Trusted the wrong people. There were businesses displaced that weren't supposed to be. A restaurant, in particular. Family-owned for generations. Olivia's hand froze mid-reach for her water. What happened? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My project manager assured me the owners had been properly compensated, that they were ready to retire. Sebastian's eyes met hers, filled with genuine regret. I found out later it wasn't true. By then it was too late. The building had been demolished. He shook his head. I've tried to locate the family, make amends somehow. They seem to have disappeared. The world tilted beneath Olivia, her carefully constructed narrative fractured. Sebastian hadn't deliberately targeted her family. He'd been deceived by his own team. Over the following weeks, Olivia's revenge plot evolved into something more complex. She excelled at her job, transforming the hotel's opening gala into a celebration of Cedar Falls history. Each day brought her closer to Sebastian, who sought her input not just on events, but on community outreach programs. You understand this? Town in a way I never could, he told her one evening as they reviewed proposals in his office. Their shoulders touched briefly as they leaned over the blueprints, sending an unwelcome warmth through her body. Perhaps because I've experienced its struggles firsthand. She replied carefully. Sebastian's eyes lingered on her face. There's something familiar about you, Olivia, like we've met in another life. Her pulse quickened. Maybe we have. That night, alone in her apartment, Olivia pulled out the box of newspaper clippings documenting the fall of Morrow's Table. Among them was a statement from Thorne Resorts, expressing regret over unavoidable business decisions. She had always interpreted it as corporate doublespeak. Now she wondered if those had been Sebastian's words, not empty PR. As the gala approached, Olivia found herself torn between her original mission and the uncomfortable truth that Sebastian Thorne was not the villain she needed him to be. Worse, the flutter in her stomach whenever he entered a room had become impossible to ignore. You're getting too close, Jasmine warned after Olivia mentioned Sebastian for the 3rd time during their weekly coffee date. It's part of the plan, Olivia insisted, but the words rang hollow even to her own ears. The night before the gala, Sebastian invited her to a private tour of the hotel's newest feature, a heritage wall commemorating Cedar Falls' historic businesses. Her blood froze when she saw it. A sepia photograph of Morrow's Table, parents smiling proudly in front of their restaurant. This one's special to me, Sebastian said softly, standing so close she could feel the heat of him, reminder of mistakes I can't undo. Olivia stared at her parents' faces, her carefully constructed veneer cracking. What if you could? She whispered. Sebastian turned to her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. What do you mean? Make amends, she clarified, heart racing. If you could find that family, what would you say? He considered this, his gaze intense, that I'm sorry. That I've spent years trying to be better than the man who made that decision. His voice dropped lower. And that meeting someone who reminds me why this community matters has made me more determined than ever to get it right. As his fingers gently brushed hers, Olivia realized with startling clarity that her plan had backfired in the worst possible way. She hadn't made Sebastian Thorne fall for her fictional persona. She was falling for the real man behind the name she'd cursed for 5 years. Blurred lines the night of the gala transformed the Thorn Grand Hotel into a celebration of past and present. Under Olivia's direction, each room showcased a different era of Cedar Falls history. From its founding as a mill town to its present revival. Local artisans displayed their crafts and area musicians played throughout the evening. Olivia moved through the crowds in a deep blue gown, checking details and ensuring everything ran smoothly. She was adjusting a historical display when she felt Sebastian's presence behind her. "You've created something extraordinary," he said, his voice low near her ear. "This isn't just a hotel opening, it's a homecoming for the entire town." She turned to face him, startled by the admiration in his eyes. That was the goal. For people to reclaim their history. "Dance with me?" He extended his hand, and against her better judgment, Olivia accepted as they moved across the floor. Other couples stepped aside, creating a small bubble of privacy despite the crowded room. Sebastian held her with confident hands, his touch respectful yet intimate. "There's something I need to tell you," he said as they swayed to the music. "I've been searching for the family who owned that restaurant Marrow's Table." Olivia nearly missed a step. "Why now?" "'Cause of you." His eyes held hers. "You've reminded me that business isn't just about profit margins. It's about people. Communities." He took a deep breath. "I found them. The daughter, at least. She's still in Cedar Falls." Cold dread washed over her. "What are you going to do?" "I've established a trust. The full market value of their property, plus interest for these 5 years. And a scholarship foundation and the father's name, Thomas Morrow." Sebastian's expression was earnest. "It won't undo the damage, but it's a start." Olivia couldn't breathe. The revenge she'd planned paled in comparison to what Sebastian was freely offering. "How did you find her?" A shadow crossed his face. "Old employment records." "She worked at the restaurant through college." His hands tightened slightly on hers. "Olivia Morrow. She has her mother's maiden name on her current Ida Bennett." The world stopped. Olivia stared at him, unable to speak as the music continued around them. "How long have you known?" she finally whispered. "Since the second week." His expression remained gentle, despite the admission. "Your background check flagged the name change." "I should have said something, but I was afraid you'd leave." Anger flared, momentarily cutting through her shock. "So you've been playing me? Waiting to see how far I'd take this?" Sebastian shook his head, guiding them toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. "No, I've been giving you space to tell me the truth when you were ready." His voice lowered. "And selfishly enjoying the company of someone who sees me as I am, not as my father's son, or a corporate acquisition." "I came here to destroy you," Olivia admitted, the confession both freeing and frightening. "To make you fall in love with me, and then walk away like you walked away from my family's legacy?" Sebastian nodded slowly. "No, I deserved that. And worse." His thumb traced small circles on her hand. "What I didn't expect was to actually fall in love with the woman behind the plan." The raw honesty in his voice undid her. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. This isn't how it was supposed to go. Life rarely follows our scripts. Sebastian reached into his pocket and produced a small envelope. "This is yours, regardless of what happens next. The deed to your family's land, the trust fund, everything. No conditions." Olivia stared at the envelope, the culmination of everything she'd thought she wanted. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. He released her hands, stepping back. "You don't owe me forgiveness, Olivia. You don't owe me anything. But I hope you'll consider that sometimes the people we need to forgive most are ourselves, for carrying burdens that were never entirely ours to bear." As he turned to walk away, Olivia realized the choice before her: cling to the past and the identity she'd forged in pain, or step into an uncertain future with a man who had proven himself more complex than the villain in her story. "Sebastian." She called after him, decision made in that split second of clarity. Wait. Shattered facades the morning after the gala. Olivia sat across from Sebastian in his office, the envelope containing her family's redemption untouched between them. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in. The silence. "I need to understand," she said finally. If you knew who I was, why hire me? Why not simply send the compensation anonymously? Sebastian leaned back in his chair, fatigue evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. I tried that approach. With other businesses affected by the development, the checks were returned unopened. He met her gaze directly. I wanted to face you, to take responsibility in person. When you applied using your mother's name, it felt like ... fate. So this was all some elaborate penance? The thought stung. More than she expected at first, he admitted. But then I met you really. Met you beyond your connection to Morrow's table. His voice softened. You're brilliant, Olivia. Passionate, uncompromising. Every suggestion you made for this hotel showed me what I'd been missing in all my projects. A genuine connection to community. Olivia's throat tightened. I spent 5 years hating you. I spent 5 years hating myself, he countered. My father built his empire by prioritizing profit over people. I promised myself I'd be different, then made the exact same mistake. With my first major project, he gestured around them. Everything since the historic preservation initiatives. The local business partnerships has been an attempt to correct that original sin. The raw honesty in his voice resonated through her. My father used to say that a mistake only defines you if you refuse to learn from it. Wise man, he was. Olivia traced the edge of the envelope with her fingertip. This doesn't bring him back. No, Sebastian agreed quietly. Nothing can. But perhaps it can help your mother. And perhaps it can free you from feeling responsible for preserving a past that's already gone. The words hit with unexpected force. How much of her adult life had been shaped by that responsibility? How many opportunities had she declined? How many relationships had she avoided, all to maintain her focus on rectifying a wrong that couldn't be undone? I don't know who I am without this anger, she confessed. The admission terrifying in its vulnerability, Sebastian's expression softened. I think that's something worth discovering. They talked for hours, peeling back layers of pretense. Shared the pressures of being the heir to a controversial empire. The constant struggle to honor commitments to investors while redefining the company's approach to development. Olivia described her father's passion for feeding people. How Morrow's table had been more than a restaurant, Tit had been the heart of their community. As afternoon faded to evening, Olivia made a decision. She reached for the envelope. I'm accepting. This, she said firmly, not for myself but for my mother, and for a new project. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. What kind of project? Community culinary center. Classes for kids, kitchen space for food entrepreneurs who can't afford their own facilities, weekend markets for local farmers. The vision had formed as they talked, pieces falling into place. On the original Morrow's table site, a slow smile spread across Sebastian's face. Your father would be proud. There's something else. Olivia took a deep breath. I can't continue working here. Not because I haven't forgiven you, but because I need to forgive myself. I need to build something that's truly mine, not defined by either revenge or reconciliation. Pain flickered in his eyes. Sebastian nodded. I understand. But, she continued, heart racing, I would like to see you. Outside of work as ourselves, without pretense. The hope that bloomed in his expression was answer enough. That evening, Olivia drove to her mother's small apartment for the first time in months. Eleanor Bennett Morrow sat in her usual chair by the window, thinner than Olivia remembered, gray now dominating her once auburn hair. Mom, Olivia said softly, sitting beside her. I have something to tell you about Sebastian Thorne. Redemption's canvas 18 months later, Olivia stood in the center of the newly completed Morrow Culinary Commons, watching as Cedar Falls residents filtered through the doors for the grand opening. The building stood on the exact spot where Morrow's table had once welcomed generations of diners, but the similarities ended there. Where the restaurant had been intimate and traditional, the Commons soared with high ceilings, industrial chic fixtures and walls of windows that flooded the space with natural light. He would have loved this, Eleanor said, appearing at Olivia's side. The past year and a half had transformed her mother. The return to purpose had restored her vigor, her posture straightened, her eyes clear and focused. As the Commons Nutrition Program Director, she'd reconnected with the community that had sustained their family through their darkest days. "Do you think so?" Olivia asked, glancing toward the heritage wall where photographs of Morrow's table hung alongside stories from community members about meals shared there. "I know so." Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. Thomas never cared about the building itself. Cared about what happened inside it, people connecting, breaking bread, sharing stories. Across the room, Sebastian chatted with a group of local business owners who'd become the Commons' first kitchen tenants. Though he'd provided the initial funding through the Morrow Foundation, he'd respected Olivia's insistence on independence, serving as an advisor rather than taking control. The Commons was owned by a community trust, ensuring it would never again fall victim to corporate acquisition. Their personal relationship had evolved more slowly than their professional collaboration. Weekly coffee meetings became dinner dates, then weekend hikes through the hills surrounding Cedar Falls. They argued passionately about development, ethics, and business responsibility, challenged each other's assumptions, and gradually built something neither had expected: a partnership based on radical honesty. "Your young man keeps checking to see if you're watching him," Eleanor observed with a knowing smile. Olivia rolled her eyes. "He's hardly my young man, Mom." "No?" Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Could have fooled me." Before Olivia could respond, the room quieted as Cedar Falls mayor approached the podium for the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. Olivia moved to join him, but Sebastian reached her first. "Ready for this?" he asked quietly, his hand finding hers. "As I'll ever be." She squeezed his fingers, drawing strength from the contact. The mayor's speech celebrated the Commons as a perfect example of how communities could honor their past while building toward a sustainable future. When he called Olivia to the microphone, the applause was thunderous. "6 years ago, my family lost something precious when Morrow's table closed its doors," she began, her voice steady, despite the emotion swelling in her chest. "What I didn't understand then was that endings can also be beginnings." Her eyes found Sebastian in the crowd, his expression a mix of pride and something deeper, more profound. The Morrow Culinary Commons isn't about replacing what was lost. It's about creating something new that carries forward the most important values of our past community: sustainability and the simple joy of breaking bread together. She gestured to the busy kitchen visible through glass walls, where students from the culinary program practiced alongside veteran chefs. "This space belongs to all of us. Its success will be measured not in profit, but in the lives it transforms." The ceremony, as guests explored the facility, Sebastian found her in the small memorial garden dedicated to her father. "That was quite a speech," he said, hands in his pockets. "Very mayoral." Olivia laughed. "Don't start that again. I'm not running for office. The petition says otherwise. 300 signatures and counting." He stepped closer. "Cedar Falls could use a leader who understands both its history and its potential." "Impossible. Challenge at a time." She nodded toward the thriving Commons. "This is enough for now." Sebastian's expression grew serious. "Is it?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning beyond politics. The relationship had reached a comfortable plateau, deep, committed, but carefully maintained within boundaries Olivia had established. "What are you really asking, Sebastian?" He took a deep breath. "I'm asking if you're still afraid of fully committing to this, to us, because of who I was when we met." The directness was characteristic of their relationship now, but it still took her breath away. "That's not fair." "Maybe not," he acknowledged, "but it's honest. And we promised each other honesty even when it's difficult." Olivia turned to face the memorial plaque, her father's words engraved in bronze. "The meal is just the beginning. The community created around the table is what endures." "I was so certain about who you were," she said finally. "The villain in my story. When that proved false, I had to reconstruct my entire narrative about you, about my father's death, about my own identity." She looked up at him. "That's not something that heals overnight." "I know." He stepped beside her, their shoulders touching, "and I'm not asking for overnight. I'm asking if you're willing to keep building, day by day." From his pocket, he withdrew not a ring box, as she momentarily feared, but a small brass key. "I bought the cottage on Lakeview Drive, the one you said reminded you of your grandmother's house." Olivia stared at the key. You bought a house without telling me? I bought a house that needs significant renovation, with excellent bones and a terrible kitchen that a certain culinary center director might enjoy redesigning. His smile was tentative, as a project. Together, no pressure to make it anything more until you're ready. The gesture was so perfectly aligned with her need for both space and connection that tears pricked at her eyes. You really do know me, don't you? I'm learning, he replied, his voice thick with emotion, every day. As the evening sun cast long shadows across the Commons courtyard, Olivia reached for the key. Their fingers intertwined around the small piece of metal, not quite a promise, not quite a simple acceptance, but something honest growing between the spaces of what had been and what might yet be. A project, she agreed, her free hand finding his face. With excellent bones, when she kissed him, it wasn't the calculated move of a woman seeking revenge. Nor was it the hesitant gesture of someone afraid of repeating past mistakes. It was simply Olivia Moreau choosing to build something new atop the foundations of a past fully acknowledged but no longer defining. Around them, the Commons hummed with laughter from the demonstration kitchen, music from local artists. In the courtyard, the steady rhythm of a community reclaiming its heart. It's not erasing history, but writing a new chapter in which healing and growth intertwined like vines, reaching toward the sun.